Have you ever wondered why deep reflection can lead to a sense of isolation? Why does delving into an understanding of the world sometimes push others away? This phenomenon is not a figment of the imagination. Throughout history, society has shown wariness toward those with unconventional thinking. The reason lies not in their errors, but in their ability to see what others prefer to ignore. Consider iconic figures such as Socrates, Nietzsche, Galileo, and Tesla. Their brilliant ideas were often met with ridicule, suppression, or disregard. The cause was not a lack of intelligence, but the discomfort they caused those around them. Arthur Schopenhauer, known for his uncompromising honesty, even claimed that intellect itself is a burden, condemning those who possess a clear vision of the world to loneliness. But why does society so persistently resist those who think differently? The answer lies in the depths of human psychology. Consider this: when we are near a physically strong person, we do not feel weak, rather we admire their strength. Encountering a wealthy person may evoke envy but not a sense of personal threat. However, meeting someone whose intellect significantly surpasses our own triggers an interesting phenomenon that psychologists have termed the mirror effect. A person with exceptional intellect not only generates new ideas but also inadvertently highlights the intellectual limitations of those around them, which is rarely forgiven. The mere presence of a deeply thoughtful individual can evoke feelings of inferiority in others even if they say nothing. But why does intellect in particular cause such profound discomfort? To understand this, it's worth analyzing how the human mind perceives different forms of superiority. Physical strength, for example, is often associated with leadership or protection. Wealth inspires admiration for success and a desire for similar achievements. These qualities are perceived as external and do not necessarily challenge one's core self-perception. Intellect, however, operates differently. Unlike physical strength or material wealth, intellect is closely tied to a person's identity, their sense of self, and their capabilities. Human essence is shaped by thoughts, beliefs, and individual perceptions of reality. Encountering someone with deeper thinking who challenges established views can feel like an assault on one's identity. Often, instead of admiration, intellect provokes subconscious resistance, driven not by arrogance or disdain from the thoughtful individual, but by the fact that their presence forces others to confront their own intellectual boundaries. History shows that individuals with unconventional thinking often found themselves on the fringes of society. Their ideas not only challenged conventional views, but also wounded people's pride. And humans, by nature, will go to great lengths to protect their ego from discomfort. Recall moments from your own life when an attempt to share a deep or complex idea in casual conversation was met with misunderstanding or awkward silence. Have you noticed how people quickly change the subject when the discussion moves beyond superficial chatter? Encountering exceptional intellect often triggers an involuntary defensive reaction in people. When faced with a deeply thoughtful person, the average mind seems to switch into a self-preservation mode. Instead of showing healthy curiosity, there is inexplicable resistance, and instead of engaging in discussion, there is dismissal and rejection. This is precisely why intellectuals, philosophers, and other enlightened minds often find themselves in a kind of isolation. It's not about their desire for solitude, but the repellent effect they have on society. It is telling that confidence, as studies show, is often valued far more than intellect. On social media, for example, audiences instinctively gravitate toward those who exude confidence, even if their ideas lack depth. For this reason, charismatic but superficial thinkers often have a greater influence on the masses than nuanced, analytical minds accustomed to speaking with caveats and qualifications. History is full of examples of popular leaders, inspiring orators, and viral influencers whose popularity stems from their ability to tell people what they want to hear rather than encouraging critical thinking and analysis. Those who challenge conventional beliefs and dogmas, on the other hand, often struggle to gain a wide audience and convey their ideas to the masses. The phenomenon of intellect presents a kind of dilemma. The more actively an individual pursues truth, the further their worldview drifts from societal norms. This mirror effect not only reflects the boundaries set by society, but also sheds light on why society resists transformation. However, a natural question arises. If intellect poses such a significant threat, is there scientific evidence that people genuinely fear it? Modern neurobiological research provides compelling evidence to support this claim. Studies show that when people feel intellectually inadequate, the amygdala, the brain region responsible for detecting fear and threats, becomes activated. In simpler terms, deep thinking doesn't just cause discomfort, it triggers a primal survival response similar to that elicited by a real danger. But why does intellect engage the same neural pathways as a physical threat? The answer lies in the evolutionary traits of the human brain. For much of human history, survival depended not so much on intellect as on the ability to be accepted within a social group. In the distant past, when our ancestors lived in tribes, social cohesion was key to survival. Rejection by the group could lead to tragedy, as solitude left a person vulnerable to dangers. This is why the human mind evolved to prioritize social acceptance over intellectual achievement. When a person with exceptional intellect appears in a group, it inadvertently disrupts the established order. Their unconventional ideas, innovative perspectives, and unique thinking challenge norms and group dynamics. As a result, the brains of those around them trigger a defensive mechanism, as if confronting a potential threat rather than just someone capable of deeper and broader thinking. This is why many great thinkers feel lonely and misunderstood. It's not a lack of communication skills, but the fact that their intellect sets them apart from the masses. In a world where adaptability is valued over individuality, this becomes a serious challenge. Moreover, a study conducted at Stanford University in 2021 revealed a striking pattern. Attitudes toward intellectuals depend on the context. In one-on-one conversations, people feel less vulnerable, but in group settings, the rejection response intensifies significantly. Social status becomes increasingly important in group dynamics, significantly influencing interpersonal relationships. People's reactions are shaped not only by the level of intellect, but also by how they are perceived in comparison to other group members. When an individual feels their social position is threatened by someone with exceptional intellectual abilities, there is an instinctive urge to belittle or exclude that person. This phenomenon explains why deeply thoughtful individuals often find understanding and support in private conversations, but struggle in larger social groups. Psychological research has identified several cognitive biases that shed light on the reasons for society's rejection of intellect. One such bias is the Dunning-Kruger effect, which shows that people with low competence tend to overestimate their abilities, while highly intelligent individuals are prone to self-criticism and doubt. This creates tension in communication, as those with superficial knowledge often believe they know more than they do and reject ideas and arguments that require deeper understanding. Another important factor is the status quo bias, which involves the human brain's preference for familiar ideas and concepts over new and complex truths. This tendency can hinder the acceptance of innovative ideas and critical thinking, as people are inclined to reject what doesn't align with their established worldview. High intellect often becomes a source of unsettling reflections, causing discomfort in others. The phenomenon known as the backfire effect vividly demonstrates how encountering information that contradicts established beliefs does not lead to a reevaluation of views, but instead reinforces them. Deep thinkers often face this reaction when proposing complex and unconventional ideas. In the digital age, social media has unfortunately amplified this tendency to reject intellect. Algorithms that govern content distribution prioritize engagement over depth. This means that controversial and emotionally charged material spreads much faster than balanced and reasoned arguments. A glance at the most viral posts reveals that simple, memorable, and often misleading snippets of information overshadow substantive discussions. The paradox is that the higher a person's intellect, the harder it is for them to fit profound ideas into a viral, easily digestible format. As a result, society increasingly leans toward entertainment rather than enlightenment, creating additional challenges for intellectuals seeking widespread recognition. So what does this mean for those inclined to deep reflection? The rejection of intellect is not just a social phenomenon, it is a deeply rooted issue in biology, psychology, and culture, reinforced by social group dynamics and amplified by modern technological advancements. This is not a call for intellectuals to stop sharing their ideas and insights, but an urgent need to recognize the powerful forces opposing them. If society resists intellect, what does it truly welcome and accept? The answer is obvious. Comfort, the pursuit of a world where predictability is valued over truth and authenticity. Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the most uncompromising and honest philosophers in history, believed that intellect is not a blessing, but rather a curse. Unlike many thinkers who saw intellect as the key to success and prosperity, Schopenhauer argued that the higher a person's intellect, the harder it is for them to find common ground with society and fit within its confines. But why? What makes intellect such a heavy burden? Schopenhauer's philosophical system was built on a concept he called the will, a blind, irrational force that drives all human behavior. According to him, the vast majority of people live their lives driven by the will to life, which primarily means a pursuit of pleasure, convenience, and basic survival. However, individuals with high intellect exhibit a different approach. Instead of mindlessly following their instincts, they cultivate a will to truth, an insatiable desire to understand reality, even if that knowledge brings discomfort and suffering. While ordinary people seek pleasure and diligently avoid complex, inconvenient truths, deep thinkers strive for truth, even if it leads to pain and alienation from society. This creates an insurmountable gap between intellectuals and the rest of the world, where most people find meaning in relationships, entertainment, and familiar pleasures. Deep thinkers often feel disillusioned with these things, perceiving them as distractions from more important existential questions. Schopenhauer believed that the deeper a person understands the nature of human existence, the harder it is for them to connect with others. They see through lies and hypocrisy. Most social interactions boil down to superficial conversations, games of social status, and polite lies. For deep thinkers who prioritize truth above all, participating in this farce is often extremely difficult. In the modern world, where simplified approaches dominate, inquisitive minds thirst for depth that remains unfulfilled. While ordinary people are content with superficial conversations, intellectuals crave meaningful discussions filled with substance and understanding. This creates tangible difficulties in everyday communication, fostering feelings of boredom and alienation from the world around them. They keenly perceive the futility of human aspirations and the ephemerality of worldly desires. Arthur Schopenhauer, the eminent pessimist philosopher, saw endless pursuits of desires and ambitious goals as mere illusions. While most people tirelessly strive for wealth, power, and relationships, deep thinkers question the very purpose of these seemingly natural pursuits. This makes them appear detached and indifferent to what occupies and excites the minds of the majority. It's no surprise that highly intelligent individuals often feel misunderstood, alienated, and even resentful. Their very presence forces others to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves, which most people prefer to avoid. Schopenhauer likened high intellect to a heightened sense of awareness, a gift that feels more like a curse. He wrote, "A high degree of intellect tends to make a person unsociable," emphasizing that deep understanding of the world can lead to isolation from society. His reasoning was straightforward. Expanding the horizons of understanding inevitably narrows the possibilities for carefree existence. Deepening awareness of the world's imperfections clouds the prospect of personal happiness. The more deeply one reflects, the heavier the burden of loneliness becomes. Schopenhauer believed there was an inverse relationship between the level of intellect and the capacity for happiness. He argued that ignorance, not wisdom, is the true key to a serene life. This is why great thinkers throughout history, such as Friedrich Nietzsche, Blaise Pascal, and Franz Kafka, often faced depression, existential crises, and alienation from society. However, Schopenhauer didn't stop at identifying the problem. He proposed possible solutions. He believed that, although intellect inevitably leads to loneliness, there are ways for deep thinkers to cope with isolation. First and foremost, one must accept loneliness as a given. Schopenhauer viewed solitude not as a punishment, but as a kind of privilege, offering opportunities for self-development. He believed deep thinkers should use their time alone for intellectual pursuits and creative self-expression rather than seeking societal approval. It's also important to seek like-minded individuals, people who share similar views and interests. Instead of fruitless attempts to blend into the faceless masses, Schopenhauer strongly recommended that great minds seek kindred spirits who resonate with their thoughts and aspirations. These like-minded individuals might be found in the pages of books, philosophical treatises, or select intellectual communities. The philosopher urged wise interaction with the world, cautioning against recklessly pouring out deep knowledge to those unprepared to receive it. Instead, thinkers were advised to observe society carefully, understand its unwritten rules, and weigh their words thoughtfully. Schopenhauer's guidance serves as a compass for modern intellectuals facing societal rejection. Intellect, often leading to loneliness, simultaneously grants freedom, wisdom, and a deeper understanding of existence. Schopenhauer saw intellect as a double-edged sword, a source of both power and suffering. It allows one to see the true nature of the world, but also distances them from those who prefer to live in a world of illusions. Schopenhauer's philosophy confirms what many suspect. Society does not fear intellect itself, but the revelations it brings. Often, a genius's innovative ideas are rejected not because they are wrong, but because they are too prescient, ahead of their time. If you've ever felt lonely in your reflections, remember that this is not a sign of inadequacy, but rather evidence of your ability to see the world in its true light. The question arises, are deep thinkers doomed to alienation, or are there ways to engage with society without sacrificing intellectual depth? It must be acknowledged that societal structures are not inherently designed to embrace innovative ideas. Their primary goal is to maintain stability. Most people prefer comfort and predictability over the pursuit of truth and intellectual discovery. This is why social media is dominated by superficial conversations, simple concepts, and endlessly recycled content. But why is comfort valued above intellectual depth? Why does society resist change, even when it promises progress and improvement? The answer lies in the peculiarities of human psychology and how social institutions shape our thinking from an early age. The human brain naturally seeks certainty and predictability. Nature has endowed humans with a tendency to avoid intellectual effort, a phenomenon known in psychology as cognitive ease. This phenomenon explains why the brain prefers simple, familiar information, as it requires less mental energy to process. When an idea is complex, multifaceted, or new, the brain perceives it as difficult and potentially dangerous. System justification theory sheds light on why people tend to defend the existing order, even when it's not in their interest. Instead of questioning authorities or outdated beliefs, most prefer to rationalize them, as change seems too unpredictable. Groupthink also plays a significant role. People are more likely to conform to widely accepted views than risk rejection by challenging them. This is why the majority often rejects intellectual dissent, even when it's grounded in truth. This deeply rooted psychological preference for comfort over complexity explains why intellectuals, philosophers, and scientists often struggle to gain widespread recognition, especially during their lifetimes. Their ideas, which require mental effort to understand, can repel those seeking cognitive ease. In today's digital landscape, where information spreads at lightning speed, social media attention is captured not by those with deep knowledge and analytical minds, but by those who can transform complex concepts into memorable, emotionally charged snippets that go viral instantly. Serious discussions requiring thoughtful analysis and time for reflection struggle to gain traction, while viral content designed for instant gratification and emotional response easily captures the audience's attention. Social media algorithms prioritize content that drives user engagement. Nothing attracts people more than controversy, outrage, or humor, pushing rational and intellectual discussions to the background. As a result, so-called echo chambers form, where individuals are exposed only to information that reinforces their existing beliefs, making them unreceptive to new perspectives and alternative ideas. In this environment, deep thinkers who propose unconventional approaches and challenge established views often go unnoticed, misunderstood, or even face criticism and attacks. However, this disregard for deep thinking is not confined to the virtual world, but also manifests in institutions meant to shape our consciousness. In educational institutions and workplaces, quick solutions and superficial knowledge are often valued over critical thinking and in-depth analysis. In the modern education system, despite claims of prioritizing intellect, schools often reward obedience rather than independent thinking. Students who excel at memorizing and reproducing information achieve greater success, while those who ask questions and challenge authorities often face negative evaluations. In the corporate world, preference is given not to the most intelligent or innovative employees, but to those who easily adapt to the existing culture and uphold the established hierarchy. In politics, leaders who express bold and unpopular ideas based on logic often lose to those who simply tell people what they want to hear. History is replete with examples of great intellectuals who were isolated during their lifetimes because their ideas were perceived as threats rather than valuable contributions. Society proclaims the value of intellect, innovation, and critical thinking, but only recognizes their significance when they become safe and widely accepted. Take Galileo, for example, who was imprisoned for his scientific discoveries, yet today his name is revered as a symbol of scientific genius. History knows many instances where geniuses, whose names now inspire awe, faced misunderstanding and even hostility during their lifetimes. Van Gogh, whose paintings are now worth millions, died in poverty. Nikola Tesla, whose inventions revolutionized energy, passed away in obscurity. The paradox is that society often rejects innovative ideas, seeing them as threats to established norms, only to recognize their value later when they no longer pose a danger. What should those with unconventional thinking do when faced with misunderstanding? It's important to remember that you are not alone. Throughout history, many great minds faced persecution, ridicule, and neglect. Their ideas seemed dangerous, disruptive, or simply too complex for their contemporaries to grasp. What united these thinkers was that they were ahead of their time, and their wisdom came at a cost. Take Socrates, the founder of Western philosophy. He devoted his life to questioning conventional beliefs, urging people to think critically, analyze their ideas, and be guided by logic rather than blindly following tradition. Yet instead of being celebrated for his brilliant mind, Socrates was put on trial, accused of corrupting the youth and disrespecting divine powers. His true crime was inspiring people to think independently and critically examine the world around them. Despite being given the chance to avoid his tragic fate, Socrates chose to drink the hemlock rather than betray his convictions and abandon his principles. His famous words, spoken in the face of death, "An unexamined life is not worth living," became his spiritual testament. His death was a stark warning to society, demonstrating its fear of those who dare to challenge established dogmas and fundamental beliefs. Galileo's transgression lay solely in his pursuit of truth and scientific discovery. When he presented compelling evidence for the heliocentric model, shattering centuries-old religious dogma about Earth centrality, he came into conflict with the powerful Church. The Church, which for centuries maintained its authority by controlling knowledge and shaping public opinion, branded him a heretic and apostate. Under the threat of brutal torture, Galileo was forced to publicly recant his scientific discoveries, which were based on meticulous research and observation. Although today we recognize him as one of the greatest scientists in human history, during his lifetime, he was sentenced to house arrest, and his works were banned and forgotten for nearly a century. Galileo's story is a vivid testament to the fact that even the most irrefutable truths can be rejected and condemned if they threaten the existing power structure and established order. Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophical works were considered too bold and unsettling in his time. He argued that conventional moral standards were flawed, asserting that society was built on deceptive illusions and that true strength lies in independently defining one's principles. Such concepts were too radical for his contemporaries to grasp. Nietzsche was branded a madman, and his works received little attention or understanding. Yet today, his philosophical legacy profoundly influences psychology, literature, and existentialism. Nietzsche's reflections on power, will, and morality shape modern philosophy, proving that society often rejects brilliant thinkers during their lifetimes only to recognize their greatness later. Nikola Tesla, a visionary inventor, foresaw the future. He dreamed of providing the world with free energy, wireless electricity transmission, and technological breakthroughs that could fundamentally transform human civilization. But society, particularly influential circles, saw his ideas as a threat to their interests. Industrialists like Thomas Edison and J.P. Morgan profited from the sale of electricity, so Tesla's revolutionary concept of free energy received no support and was forgotten. Despite his extraordinary genius, Nikola Tesla ended his days in the solitude of a modest hotel room, forgotten and destitute, while enterprising businessmen enriched themselves by exploiting his groundbreaking inventions. Tesla's fate is a striking illustration of how society often favors shrewd marketers over true visionaries who drive progress. Alan Turing's contributions to cryptography played a decisive role in ending World War II. His exceptional code-breaking abilities saved countless lives. His theoretical work in computing laid the foundation for modern artificial intelligence. However, instead of the recognition and honors he deserved, he faced harassment and bullying because of his private life. In 1952, he was subjected to the humiliating procedure of chemical castration for his homosexuality, which ultimately led to his tragic end of life at the age of 41. Today, Alan Turing is recognized as a national hero, but at one time society rejected him despite his invaluable contributions to science and progress. Historically, deep thinkers have often been men, but Hypatia of Alexandria was a striking exception. This remarkable woman, a philosopher, mathematician, and astronomer, challenged the male-dominated intellectual world of ancient Rome. Her tragic fate as a woman dedicated to teaching scientific and rational thinking serves as a somber reminder of the conflict between reason and dogma. In 415 CE, she fell victim to religious fanatics who saw her educational work as a threat to their influence. Her story reveals a pattern that runs through human history. The pursuit of intellectual progress often faces fierce resistance from conservative forces. The fates of many great thinkers are similar. Their innovative ideas ahead of their time met with rejection, ridicule, and sometimes harsh punishment. Yet in time, these rejected concepts became the foundation for the further development of civilization. Society's fear is not of intellect itself, but of the changes it brings. This raises a natural question. If history shows the rejection of such minds, what should a deep thinker do? Are they doomed to loneliness? Not at all. It's important to understand how to build relationships with society while considering its readiness to accept new ideas. Not every place or person is ready for serious discussions and deep analysis. Wisdom lies in navigating the social context and finding allies to spread your views. There's no need to waste profound reflections on those unable to appreciate them. Instead of seeking universal recognition, focus on finding like-minded individuals who can understand and share your ideas. These people may be found in the pages of books, online communities, or intellectual circles. History knows many examples of great thinkers who managed to convey their profound ideas to a broad audience. Albert Einstein once remarked, If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Thus, strive for clarity and accessibility in expressing your thoughts, avoiding unnecessary complexity and overload. Arthur Schopenhauer, in turn, said, "Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see." Deep thinkers possess a unique perspective on the world, which sometimes causes discomfort and misunderstanding in others. However, this should not be a reason to abandon deep reflection. Society needs people who can see beyond the surface, even if it's not always ready to accept their ideas. If you've ever felt like an outsider because of the depth of your thoughts, remember that you are not alone. Though society sometimes fears unconventional thinking, it is deep thinkers who are the driving force behind humanity's progress and development. If this video stirred an emotional response or touched on topics important to you, the author encourages you not to hesitate and share your thoughts in the comments section. Have you ever experienced a moment when your deep reflections and unconventional ideas were met with misunderstanding or even rejection from those around you? The author invites you to start an open discussion on this topic, exchange opinions, and perhaps find like-minded individuals. And of course, if you're drawn to exploring the biographies and ideas of great thinkers of the past and present, the author invites you to subscribe to the channel, promising that this is just the beginning of a fascinating journey into the world of philosophy.